The accompanying observation summary. If one reads the order carefully, it says, having received that, after deliberation, the Chief Elections Officer should be advised to make a final submission. And that final submission, referred to as a report, having been made, we should be given 3 days to make a determination.
The commission is going to be deliberating on the report.
The report submitted on the report submitted on the 13th, which is a composite report of the tabulation and the observation report, will be deliberated on by the commission. After those deliberations, the commission will then give the instruction to the Chief Elections Officer to prepare a final report, which report will then be given 3 days for determination in relation to the pronouncement on the result of a credible election.
What is expected out of this deliberation on this report? What can the public expect out of this deliberation?
Well, first of all, public can expect some concrete information in relation to what has come out of the observation reports, and therefore that concrete information should be related to whether we had migrants voting, whether we had dead people voting, and a number of other anomalies which have already been brought to the public attention along the way.
This would mean that the Secretariat would have to do some amount of reconciliation of the information in the observation reports and present it.
Well, I wouldn't call it reconciliation. I would call it, they would have to do summation. And in that summation, as far as possible, they would have to quantify.
Yeah, but out of the quantifying and the summation, we would want to know if it is factual that migrants have voted or the
Definitely, because what I'm saying is if they're going to speak about migrants, it has to be based on evidence provided. And therefore, based on the evidence provided, they'll have to come to a conclusion and to quantify in relation to that conclusion.
So this means that the Secretariat also will be doing some verification of the information.
I repeat, as I've said previously, a specific reference to the migrants.
I remember you.
That information has been submitted, that has been forwarded to the Chief Immigration Officer, and depending on the returns, we'll be in a position to make a pronouncement. I think what the Chief Immigration Officer provides will be conclusive evidence on the matter. We can then quantify what has occurred in that circumstance.
Mr. Alexander, if it is found that there were cases in which persons voted in place of the dead, what could be the likely impact? Would it affect, I know you would have mentioned it depends on the magnitude of the irregularities, but even if it's one, would that affect anything?
I think the issue here, as provided for in order, is the question of the credibility of the elections. I'm of the view that indeed one has to have a certain magnitude of occurrence if one is to make a statement that the elections are not credible.
Mr. Alexander, some clarification on the deliberation by the Commission. I would like some clarity on whether the results coming out of the recount, whether those results would be automatically accepted or whether they can be chosen, whether there's a case of an alternative. I'm trying to ask whether the Mingo declaration can still be used. I ask because in reading the order, it says that the Commission will deliberate on whether to ask the Chief Elections Officer to use this data. say it doesn't seem to be an automatic case where the recount results. Whatever comes out of this process here will be used by the commission. So I'm just asking for clarity on that.
This is an opinion of mine. It's not a commission's position. My own opinion is that once we complete the recount, then the previous declarations will be overtaken
But again,
by
this
that
is just
recount.
an opinion, not a definitive.
That is my opinion, will be overtaken by that, and therefore whatever we pronounce on thereafter will be in relation to what comes out of the recount.
Just one other question of clarity. On the verification/investigations to be carried out by the Secretariat prior to handing over its report, can you say whether the time that is remaining is anywhere close to looking into 90,000, 80,000 plus reports of these nature?
Well, I don't know of that number that you've referred to, but what I know,
100.
Is that one should not be waiting to investigate. As soon as those things are brought to our attention, the investigation should be embarked upon immediately. So I don't see us waiting until we come to the conclusion of a district or of the districts to say, let's now go and investigate. As soon as the information is made available by those who are making the allegation, then the investigation should be pursued with immediacy.
The Secretariat has started to formally try to ascertain these.
I have said previously that in relation to the migrants, that information some days ago would have been forwarded to the Chief Immigration Officer. So they have, in fact, embarked on the process of discerning or determining whether the information is evidential.
And on the matter of deaths?
On the matter of deaths, there's not much that I have to say. I don't know that there is much action that I'm aware of on that matter, but undoubtedly you would have, through the recent expose in the media, come to understand that the matter of births and deaths is not a private matter, and that any one of us, by virtue of the provisions of the law, can inquire officially.
I'm asking whether the Secretariat was looking.
Well, I don't know of significant reports in terms of deaths, so I can't say that they are, but I would think that once they... in fact, I'll treat deaths even differently. I'll treat deaths even differently. I would take a death certificate on the face of the document. It's an official document. Once it's an original document, my disposition will be to take it for what it's worth. I don't see we have to go and verify a death certificate. I don't know that in the course of things, for example, I don't know the court, when dealing with wills and things of that nature, probate or whatever, that when you submitted that certificate, they didn't go back to find out if it's an original document. Once on the face of the document you can see the originality, it's take for what it's worth.
But has there been any cases, as we're talking about death, has there been any cases where an objection has been raised and the OLE confirmed that a ballot was issued for this serial number or person?
I am of the impression that the answer would be yes.
Can we see something to substantiate?
Well, you'd have to ask
Copy
this.
of the report, something?
I suppose at the appropriate time that will be made available.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Alexander, last night we took note of the statement from the National COVID-19 Task Force stating that they wouldn't advise for the establishment of the co-workstation. Is this something that the Commission discussed today? And would it still go ahead with that?
The Commission noted that, and if you look at the order, you will see we have excluded an element which originally was in the draft, and that was to provide for additional workstations. That element has been excluded, so we are on course with what we have.
Mr. Alexander, one time you had said in relation to the claims being made of fraudulent votes that a vital consideration would be whether the magnitude of the fraud eclipses the margin of victory, something like that. To what extent would that be the the major factor in determining whether the elections were credible?
But I'm not quite sure I ever spoke about the margin of victory because the issue of victory can only be talked about in the case where there has been a declaration of victory. In
Well,
the absence of a declaration of victory, there's no question of the margin of victory. It might be the margin of difference, but certainly not the margin of victory. Uh, I would retain the argument that jurisprudentially there has been a tendency to use the magnitude to determine how one treats with the matter. But I am equally advised that the jurisprudence is not static and that in fact in more recent jurisprudence there's been a movement away from merely magnitude to the question of once the process is corrupted without necessarily doing a arithmetic interpretation, once a process is sufficiently corrupted, then it brings the process into question.
okay. You had said that these counted regions, once the declaration is made, it would overtake the declarations currently in abeyance. Am I to understand that each certificate has overtaken its corresponding region, or that has to wait for the declaration, or all to overtake?
Well, as I've said repeatedly, we are not having 10 declarations. We're having one declaration. So the question of the 10 being overtaken is subject to the one declaration.
Okay, but I mean, in this case, a regional certificate would be the equivalent to a regional declaration.
In terms of the numerical count, but we are not here merely into numerical count. We are into something that's different. And so the regional tabulation, district tabulation, has to be seen in conjunction with the observation report.
Okay, and finally, is a declaration after this 3-day period, is a declaration certain?
Something has to be declared. Something has to be declared.
Not necessarily a declaration of the election's results.
Oh, I would say yes, a declaration of the results. You ran a race, you won a race, you lost a race, you squashed a race, you declared what happened to the race.
Mr. Alexander, there were a number of other issues that were being raised. I know the on-stamp ballots, the polling books. Has any of these been raised and discussed at the level of the meeting, the commission's meeting?
The on-stamp ballots were discussed. Yes, those were discussed, and we established scenarios. So yes, those were discussed.
I know yesterday you said the alarming number could see the commission revisiting the decision. Has it come up today?
No, it did not. It did not.
Is it going to come up at any point in time for any amount of review?
I would think so. I have every reason to believe that there's an instance where in one box, 801 ballots were unstamped. And I think that's a sufficient number in the case of one box for us to be concerned about the phenomenon.
And in cases like that, the polling book should be critical to understanding if something took place at that particular.
It may be critical. It may be critical, but there are a whole set of scenarios, and that is why we have to be careful how we treat with the matter. In the instance of unstamped ballots, one has to bear in mind that in the first instance, the two ballots are on one ballot sheet. And the instruction given to the election officials is to fold the ballot sheet along the vertical axis and then to stamp the top on the bottom, which means in fact what you're doing, you're stamping the general election ballot paper and the regional election ballot paper because the two will be separated at the time of count. I'm advised that there may have been instances where these ballot papers were folded along the horizontal axis. And the two stamps were in fact placed. But because they were folded along the horizontal axis, those two stamps turned out to be on the same half of the document, and therefore the other half would not have been stamped, though the intention was to do so. Now, I don't know if in the circumstance where your reason for stamping the ballot is to determine that this is a legitimate document, a valid ballot, and if you discover that human error, that you have grounds to say that vote must not be counted.
Mr. Zander, you spoke to the evidence part that the Secretariat or the Commission may start investigation almost immediately when the evidence are presented.
Yes.
In the areas of these other anomalies where the Commission will have to make a decision, will these decisions be made after the report is submitted or before the CEO's report is submitted?
Anomalies like those are reported along the way. And as they're reported along the way, they're discussed and decisions are made about them.
And how early are we likely to see a commission decision on the on stamp ballots?
So far, given the cases that have come before us, there has been a decision. But I'm saying that there are scenarios which have not yet come before us, which may result in other decisions.
Mr. Alexander, I know there were cases in which some boxes were sent back to the container due to, say, for example, the absence of the OLE or excess ballots inside those boxes. Could you say, if I'm not sure, could you say if those matters were treated?
Those matters have been investigated. A moment ago was inquiring, and those investigations are not complete. But specific reference examples of the instance in the Diamond Nursery School, the matter is being investigated, and I am advised a report should be available shortly.
So those boxes didn't come from the regions that have been deemed completed? Because I know it was early on in the recount, when the recount just started.
No, you need to, Region 4 was always being counted.
Oh, so they came from Region 4?
Those, the ones I'm referring to, came from Region 4.
Mr. Alexander, are you aware of a box being opened yesterday that for which the contents were still?
There's another soap box that's been attended to, and I think we hope by the end of today to be able to count that soap box.
To what extent do you see the issue of missing poll books being a problem that can hold up this process?
Missing poll books are a problem in instances where there would have been affidavits of oaths of affidavit and certificates of employment which should have been recorded in those books. In the instance where there are no such records which we have to review, which are normally found in those books, I don't think that the poll book itself is that material. But where you have issues about certificates of employment, about people voting without affidavits and so, or with affidavits, the book becomes important.
Mr. Alexander, also, how significant is the poll book in relation to this seal on the ballot box itself? Because one stakeholder is claiming that that seal and the number is supposed to be recorded in the poll book, so you will know that that is the seal when you will give it. How significant?
That is situational. If you have a situation where there's a problem with a seal, and you go into that box, and you're able to reconcile all the information in the box, though the seal should not have been interfered with, the fact of the seal being interfered with becomes immaterial to the election insofar as it would not impact on the count.
Mr. Alexander, Mr. Aubrey Norton once told us that the coalition was in possession of sworn affidavits of persons who claimed that the PPP paid them to vote in the party's favor. Were any of these affidavits submitted to DECON?
I have no knowledge of them.
Okay.
I have no knowledge of them.